US, so we can like start with US, go international, and bring it back to US. We can start with international, just kind of like however you feel the conversation is going to flow. We'll do it that way.
Okay, cool. So I definitely just accidentally started it, so we'll just get going. I like bumped the button, but it's all good because we were about to start anyway.
Cool. We're starting whether we want to or not.
Yeah, there are currently 0 viewers. So, hello, first viewer. Okay, so this is the weekly Fight for the Future live stream where we basically just discuss what's going on in digital rights and in technology. I'm joined by Dayton Young, who is our product director here at Fight for the Future. Today, our topics are a little bit more narrow than they usually are. We're going to be discussing what happened yesterday with the Wallstreetbets / Robinhood hearing. And then a little bit later, we'll be touching on some new stuff with cryptocurrency and the US Treasury and stuff that's going on around the world in relation to cryptocurrency. But Dayton, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit?
Dayton Young, product director at Fight for the Future. Love building websites, building digital tools that help connect people to their lawmakers, and fighting for digital rights.
Cool. So I know you didn't watch the entire hearing yesterday. I tried to watch as much of it as I could, but it was sort of the same thing repeatedly.
I tapped out earlier than you did. I mean, good on you for lasting as long as you did, but man, it was a lot of evasive answers, political grandstanding, and a lot of bullshit, to be honest. So that was just very disappointing to see. That, as much as we were hoping to see changes coming out from the congressional hearings, that it just seemed like it was a lot of bluster.
And I feel like after having watched it, I don't understand exactly what happened, and in part of like Robinhood and with their like relationship with Citadel and everything. Like they asked a lot of pretty good questions and they got a lot of like really garbage or evasive answers, and it's super frustrating. Like there was a specific moment when Maxine Waters was asking Vlad Tenev, the CEO of Robinhood, like a bunch of like really direct, like simple questions. And I understand that sometimes things aren't yes or no answers to things, but it was like comical. It was like a kind of like a skit, like the way that he was answering them in the most evasive way possible. There was almost like comedic timing to it or something. It was wild. One highlight of it though was kind of getting to understand Keith, whose last name I can't remember, but he's the guy.
Keith Gill, yeah.
Keith Gill, also known as Deep Fucking Value on Wallstreetbets. Seeing him actually explain some of what went on from his perspective was super interesting. Hearing a little bit of his background and just that, like, when he began investing in GameStop, it really was not like a trick. Like from what I can tell, he genuinely believed that like the gaming market is too big for this company to go under. If they change a few things, they should be fine, and that at like $4 they were undervalued, and that actually makes sense to me. Like if they could course correct, and the way that the company was being shorted, he saw an opportunity. And the fact that people are trying to frame it as like this market manipulation in the face of the fact that like large Wall Street companies got together to try and like prevent people from buying GameStop is just wild. I guess you were mentioning earlier that he has now entered a lawsuit, I think as of like yesterday, over market manipulation. Is that right?
Yeah, so he's facing a class action lawsuit that's been filed against him. It seems like, from what I'm reading, the firm, I've never heard of them, but it's called Hagens, Berman, Sobel, Shapiro, which is a securities class action firm. So some investors who lost money in the whole GameStop shenanigans, I guess, I don't know what other way to call it, are suing him. They're saying that he isn't just some random guy, that he's worked in the market, that he is I think a licensed broker, that he manipulated the stock for his own personal financial game as part of some get rich quick scheme, and because they lost money, they're seeking damages from him. I think that's probably not going to hold up in court. From what as a deep fucking value posted on Wallstreetbets consistently throughout the whole GME experience, he was showing his portfolio and how much he was holding and how he wasn't selling. I mean, that was the whole meme, right? Diamond hands. He was up to something like $50 million in value at one point and still wasn't selling. I mean, if I had $50 million in GameStop shares, I would have sold. I would have sold before I got to 50 million. And he held on to it. It wasn't part of a get-rich-quick scheme for him. Now he's obviously still up millions of dollars. He may have had other accounts that he wasn't showing people. There's all sorts of things we don't know about what he did and what he didn't do. But he was very transparent with a lot of his actions. And Wallstreetbets, they always mention that they're not giving you financial advice. They're not advisors. This is a meme board. It's people having fun. It's going to be really hard for these people to prove that he manipulated the stock for his own personal gain. But what it is going to do is it's going to cause him a lot of headaches, and it's probably going to cause him to spend a lot of money in legal fees representing himself and trying to fight this case. It's also, just shocking to me that people would bring this kind of class action lawsuit against him. Where's the class action lawsuit against Robinhood for, stopping people from buying more GME shares but allowing people to sell? Where's the class action lawsuit against people like Kramer, who go on TV all the time and give terrible financial advice that cause people to lose money? I just don't think I don't think it's reasonable. I think it's, clearly some people are upset who are just going after a quick buck themselves. And I don't think it's going to hold up, but I think it is going to cause Keith and his family a lot of stress, and it's going to cost them money.
Something that I think is a big takeaway from this entire situation is that there has been sort of a shift of power in finance very recently. Like, this is the first, other than cryptocurrency, this is one of the first big shakeups that I've seen, where historically there have been all of these big hedge funds that have tons of resources and the ability to do lots of research and dedicate lots of time and pool their resources. And now we're seeing sort of this decentralized and distributed, not copy, but just sort of evolution of what hedge funds have been doing, where people can get online in a community, can discuss stuff that they think is a good idea to invest in, and collectively have influence over different markets. And I think that's one of the reasons that people are so pissed off at Keith Gill, is because this is the first time they've really gotten a black eye from a subreddit, basically, which is funny to think of a subreddit as sort of a pseudo hedge fund, but for a while there, Wallstreetbets kind of was. I wouldn't argue that they're consistently as accurate as they were with GameStop, but the genie is out of the bottle. The potential is there. And my fear is that we see some sort of regulation come down that makes it very hard for communities online to self-assemble and make the kind of moves that Wallstreetbets did. And I think that's something where a group like Fight for the Future can come in and advocate for this decentralized communal nature of sharing information like that.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely. I think, for the longest time, as you said, you have seen hedge funds throwing their weight around in the markets to control what's happening with shares. And that's exactly how GME started, right? Is that these hedge funds went short on GameStop hard, and that has an effect on GameStop. That if they were successful, they could have put GameStop out of business, right? They were making big bets and using the market forces to kind of force GameStop out of business sooner so they could profit off of it. And so, 10 people with investing $10 million each, I'm not good at math, I might get this wrong, I think that's $100 million. If you get 1 million people investing $1 each, that has the same market sway as those 10 people. And so what Wallstreetbets did in this scenario was it gathered a lot of small investors together. It helped them understand the risk to this company that everybody really liked. It helped people understand the upside, because let's not forget, when GameStop was at $4 a share, they brought in new executives. This guy who was the CEO of Chewy, who had turned around other businesses before and been very successful in transitioning, brick and mortar stores into a digital, profitable digital businesses. And there were, genuine reasons to think that this was an undervalued stock. And the right number, the right amount of the right price for the stock is probably, I don't know, $20, maybe 40. It's been hovering around 40, 47 the last few days. That still seems a little high to me. But there was a genuine opportunity to make a lot of money off of this stock, and people liked the stock. They bought in because they thought it was fun. They bought in because they thought it would be profitable. They bought in because they liked the stock, because they wanted to. There's nothing wrong with people making those decisions. And the fact that you had a lot of different people kind of on board for a variety of different reasons, it did show a very powerful potential for the public to participate in the market. And the reality is that the public has been shut out of market participation for a very long time. Even, the Americans who do own stocks, most of it is, it's not people who are engaging in the market and making speculative investments through E-Trade and stuff all the time. It's folks who have a 401k through their company.
Right.
And so people are, Americans, myself included, I have a business degree and I'm still woefully ignorant of the markets and the way these things work. Because unless you're doing this as a full-time job, it's very hard to compete with folks who are doing this full-time job.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the other part of it that I think is really interesting is that the naked shorting of GameStop was sort of treated as business as usual. It's just the way the game is played. No big deal. If you don't like it, go home. But the reality is that when stuff like the naked shorting GameStop 140% has very real consequences for tens of thousands of people that actually depend on their income from GameStop. If that company goes under, they are screwing over a lot of people. And it's not like the resistance to that through the GME whole Wallstreetbets project, to me, beyond just being a funny meme, was sort of this statement against this bullshit that's going on in Wall Street, where people are treating it like it's no big deal. But there are very real consequences when hedge funds play games like this for people's lives. And it's just wild that it's treated as no big deal, and everybody, but people are upset that a subreddit organized and decided to buy a stock together.
Well, it's who's upset and who treats it as business as usual, right? So there was a very disgusting and dishonest article in the Wall Street Journal, go figure, that was a profile of one of the hedge fund managers who was being hit by his shorts that were not coming through the way he wanted them to. And, he had some sort of quote, which was, I've been doing this a long time and people have never taken it so personally. It's just, it's just business. And it's nobody's, made insults or threats to me before. And I'm like, dude, you are putting people out of business. They mentioned that he'd made his fortune shorting stocks in China. And I'm like, you have built up your billion-dollar investing empire by screwing people over in developing countries. And you're legally allowed to do it, but morally people are going to be upset when that happens. And, I think what we're seeing is a lot of ordinary folks like us and everyone on Wallstreetbets are looking at these situations and saying we disagree. We have numbers against these folks. We have the numbers. We don't have the money, but we have the numbers. What can we do to push back? And this was really an emperor has no clothes type of moment. You saw one of the other investment firm managers who had an interview. I wish I could remember who it was, but he said something like, the people are sitting home attacking us by buying shares with their government checks. And it's just this insane ideology that these wealthy, powerful people think that we're somehow getting these big money checks from the government, and we're going and we're gonna be like, let's do class warfare and screw over the billionaires because that's gonna make me feel good. It's people who have nothing left to lose. Like Wallstreetbets, you see people going YOLO on stupid stocks all the time because $10,000 is their entire life savings. And they understand that while that's their entire life savings, they know that if I'm 30 years old, my entire life savings is $10,000, I'm never going to retire. You know, a nursing home costs $10,000 a month. What are you going to do with $10,000? You might as well go big on GME and see if you can strike it rich, because you have no other hope for getting anything done. If you are unemployed because of the pandemic and you got a $600 check or an $800 check, or at best a $1,200 check from the government 12 months ago, $100 a month to live on for this past year, and you decide to splurge whatever you have left on GameStop, like that is a symbol of desperation and of a desperately broken economy that is not working for individuals. And so the fact that these people are so clueless that they are, in their mind, it's some sort of socialist, attack on their wealth and their, I don't even have the words. It's ludicrous. It's just a ludicrous paranoid fantasy, and they're so out of touch. It's just another let them eat cake moment in current events, and it should be shocking and disgusting for anybody who's paying attention.
And all the while they're complaining about all of this, like the reality of it is that, and because this is something that I learned from this is one of the things that I learned from the hearing yesterday, was that when you are a retail investor and you're buying stock on Robinhood, you're not really getting the best price, I guess. They were talking about how everything goes through Citadel, and Citadel is definitely giving, they have like this like standard level like price that you can get for stocks, and then they're giving massive institutional investors like better access, better prices for the stocks. If you're a retail investor, you're screwed in that way. And they're allowed to like trade after hours, all kinds of crazy, they already have a huge advantage over retail investors, and they're still complaining that it's unfair, that there are more people participating, and that they think then they're taking it personally. It's totally ridiculous.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, it's elitist, it's nonsense, and it shows just how much the system is set up to benefit these people, because they were legally allowed to stop people from purchasing GameStop shares while letting other people sell. They didn't use that legal justification at the time. They retroactively said, well, we've got to protect our asses, and then once we've stopped the trading, let's figure out what the legal justification is. And I think that was one of the interesting things that came out of the congressional hearings yesterday. I think it was Maxine Waters. It might have been somebody else who mentioned, I went on your website and you didn't mention all this legal rationale for stopping the trading. You mentioned that you needed to protect yourself. And so why are you saying this now? And so I think there's a lot of ex post facto justification by these people. But the system is set up to screw folks. And I think that's what the congressional hearing showed us. We need more than just Democratic lawmakers grandstanding and shouting angrily at these folks. We need prosecutions. We need to change the laws immediately. We need to say, well, yep, those laws were unfair, so we're not gonna, we're gonna have to figure out how to change this really quickly. We need compensation for the people who were screwed by these unfair laws and regulations. I also just want to take a moment and step back and say, and name names, because talking about these people or those people, it gets a little iffy. So it was billionaire bond fund manager Jeffrey Gundlach, who said to Fox Business, of course, that it was the COVID relief checks that are behind the GameStop surge. And it's just, what a clueless buffoon.
Seriously. I'm wondering if, and I apologize, my cat's like flipping out right now.
No, don't apologize. Let's get the cat on camera.
Let's cats.
Yeah, pay the cat tax. We're on the internet.
So One thing that I'm like worried about with this is that we're just going to have the GameStop thing happen. It was a big deal. Everybody had a bunch of laughs. It was interesting. People feel like they stuck it to the man. And then Robinhood comes along, screws everybody over, and we move on like nothing happened. Like,
I see you've been alive for 20
yeah.
or 30 years.
What really needs to happen is there needs to be something in place to stop someone like Robinhood from coming along and saying, "Oh, this is going up too fast. Our friends are losing money. We can just stop the trading of this stock. You can sell it only, and that's that." Like that can't. I mean, I sincerely hope that this doesn't just go by, and it's like no big deal. Like we need to put something in place where. They can't just like freeze a stock like that. Like that wasn't just like moderating a forum online or something where people were like posting a bunch of objectionable content. This was just the market. People were trading. It's not the same. And like, I don't know. It's just wild how that happened.
So again, I do not believe that Robinhood or anybody involved in the freezing of selling was using this justification at the time. I didn't hear it from anyone. I read a few commentaries from people on like Twitter and whatnot, and talked to some folks about this that provided this explanation of why they're allowed to do this. But again, I think this is what they found afterwards, as opposed to really thinking about it in these terms in the moment. But my understanding is that the law that, or the regulation that allows them to do this, came as a result of the last financial meltdown, saying that if there's this sort of run on the market and these intermediary stockbrokers run out of money, it could collapse the entire financial system, and that actually does hurt all of us. So let's put these regulations in place that allow companies like Robinhood, who are intermediaries, to put a stop on this sort of run from happening, in order to protect everyone, including people who have just passive 401ks, and people at GameStop who, if the market crashes, well, GameStop's out of business, as well as many other companies. So how do we protect the American public? So these were regulations that came about as a result of the last financial crisis. But again, you can kind of see how there are unintended consequences. There are edge case scenarios that people don't think through when they're implementing these regulations. And I'm not a financial expert. I'm not Elizabeth Warren. I think she's very smart. She's somebody I look to oftentimes for the way she approaches the regulatory environment. I think we need people like that examining the situation and understanding how to amend the regulations we have to protect individuals, and to remove some of the regulations we have in place that benefit wealthy, connected people from dominating the market. Like you said, certain people have access to after hours trading. If you have over $200,000 in income every year, you get certain privileges for trading that ordinary investors don't have. And people will say that's to protect the ordinary investors, but protect people from what? What we saw here is that we saw a lot of people on television, on MSNBC and CNBC and all these channels, arguing that all of these ignorant Wallstreetbets folks need to be protected from making lots of money because they're jumping on board when people have done this, over leveraged and created this naked stock, this naked short situation where more stocks exist than, or more sales exist than the stocks exist. So I think that there just needs to be intelligent people in charge and compassionate people in charge, creating a marketplace that works for everybody. I'm not sure what regulations need to be in place to make that happen. I know that part of what happened here is a result of regulations that were, implemented 10 years ago. So we have to think very carefully before we make our next steps. But I think what this shows is that, again, the market and the regulations aren't working for ordinary investors. They're not working for folks. And we need to be able to find ways that to democratize investment, and to allow small investors to compete with large hedge funds.
Well, something that's really kind of scary about the fact that just to backtrack a little bit, the rule that allows or obligates Robinhood maybe to halt trading on GameStop I think exposes something really scary. The entire stock market should not be threatened by several million people buying a bunch of stock for a video game retailer. That's crazy.
The
And it's
market should
horrifying that
work
even with
by millions of people
decision.
participating. Yeah, that should be the market working in action.
Right.
If you have a market, it should be that lots of people are allowed to participate, and you're going to have these swings.
It's like, no, not that kind of participation. Like, okay, so something is very seriously wrong if the run on GameStop put the stock market in danger. That's crazy.
That's exactly right. And you heard people, I think, saying it in the weeks leading up to the investigations, as well as during the congressional hearing. I think a few people said we were very close to crashing the entire stock market. And that's wild. That should not happen because and again, let's be clear, it wasn't because a few million people participated in the market. It was because greedy, wealthy hedge fund managers made terrible bets because they thought they could get away with making bad decisions. They thought that nobody was paying attention because for the last 40, 50, 60 years, the public has been paying attention. And the people who have been paying attention, the public, have not had the ability to do anything about it, to coordinate with others, to talk about what they want to do, to get information out there to other small investors. And this was just kind of a perfect storm where these hedge fund managers got caught with their pants down. So that's what threatened the global economy, not these Wallstreetbets investors, not these retail investors, not people, putting $500 worth of their life savings into GameStop. It was wealthy people who were making bad bets because they've been rewarded in the past for making bad bets.
Well, one thing I hope with this is that we can possibly move to something that's a little bit more decentralized than the way that the stock market currently works. I know, at Fight for the Future, that's something that we've been advocating for forever. And if there was some sort of decentralized, autonomous organization that was running stock trades, they wouldn't have been able to freeze GameStop like that because there wouldn't be like a centralized entity in charge. I think hopefully we can eventually move on to something more like that would actually complement the decentralized nature of the discussion and the investment that we see in places like Wallstreetbets. And also, I guess, as a segue, that we see now currently existing in cryptocurrency. Because cryptocurrency is a global 24/7 decentralized market. And it seems to be working all right for a lot of people. There is some news coming out recently that I know you've been doing a lot of research on with the US Treasury and some possible incoming regulation. And I'd be interested in maybe spending a little time today discussing that. Would you mind giving an overview of what's going on there?
Yeah, of course. So, we talk about these things, and hopefully, a lot of people understand what we mean when we talk about decentralized and things of that nature. I think decentralized just means there's no central authority. It means there's no single person in charge. It means that lots of people can participate. It means that lots of people have a say in the outcomes, right? It's democracy in action. It's applying these democratic principles to things like the stock market, to things like monetary policy. So, these things kind of sound very complicated, and they get very complicated, more complicated than I can understand at times. But a lot of times it's very simple principles that are behind what we're talking about. One of the things I like about cryptocurrency, as you mentioned, is that decentralized nature of it. The idea behind Bitcoin, as Satoshi Nakamoto wrote when initially launching Bitcoin, is that our current systems of money rely on a lot of trust. Trust that the government isn't going to spy on our transactions. Trust that central banks are going to work in the interest of people. Trust that big banks that are backed by government aren't going to hit us with predatory fees or take our money and use it to do bad things for their own profit, while giving us very, very low or bad returns on the money that they're using to profit off of. And what we've seen, at least during my lifetime, is that our central banks, our government, our big banks are taking advantage of that trust. They're abusing our finances. And as we saw in the Wallstreetbets affair, these big gatekeepers are looking out for their own interests and the interests of the wealthy and powerful elite that kind of, set the policies and go golfing with these people on the weekends. So cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin have been very successful because they are an alternative to these state-backed currencies. It's saying that, hey, the trust doesn't come from your government, your president, the national bank, Citibank, Wells Fargo. The trust comes from every single transaction that's made, every time a Bitcoin is mined, every time somebody uses a Bitcoin to purchase Starbucks, every time I send you a Bitcoin to pay for, dog sitting or whatever it is that service that you provided for me, we're going to record this transaction publicly so that you don't have to trust anybody. Everybody in the world can see that this transaction was made, and that's going to be the basis for this currency. The value of this currency is that everything is publicly verifiable. Now, in order to protect people's security and privacy, that transaction information is protected behind a key. So if you have a wallet, that wallet has a specific code that says this is the code for Joe's wallet. Now, people can see that code, but they don't know it's Joe's wallet. If somebody knows that Joe has this code for his wallet, then it's kind of dangerous for you because they can track every single transaction you've ever made on that public blockchain. All right. So what the United States is doing is propose the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, which is part of the Treasury, has proposed a new rule that would give the government the ability to do exactly that, to associate your public key with your private identity so that they can look and find out every transaction you've ever made with cryptocurrency online. Now, proponents of this bill say that it is similar to existing regulations for regular money. And there's some truth to this. The way it works right now, and stop me if I'm getting too wonky or going off on a tangent here, but the way it works right now is that if I have a checking account, and if all of a sudden I get $50,000 deposit in my checking account, my bank might say, this guy doesn't make that kind of money. This guy doesn't get $50,000 deposits very often. That's a little suspicious. Did he do something wrong? And they are required by federal law to make a report and send it to the government to be like, hey, just so you know, something a little bit funky is happening in Dayton's checking account. If you want to look into it, that's your business. Now the government, so that's a law. That's a reporting requirement. But if the government wants to know more about my finances and look at all the transactions I've ever made to see what's happening, they have to go to a judge and get a warrant or subpoena my bank to get my records. They have to go through some sort of a process to say, hey, this is very suspicious. We think Dayton might be involved in crimes. We want to look at his finances. There has to be other people along the way who are making decisions about who gets to look at my finances, because I have federally protected privacy rights. There are laws in place that say, hey, like this is an essential right that I have, that you can't just go through my files and know what I'm spending my money on. That's my business, not yours. Because there's all sorts of ways that can be used against people, to demonize their behavior, to embarrass them publicly. Nobody has a right to know what we're buying.
Well, never mind the fact that when people know that they're being watched, they behave differently anyway.
Yeah,
so it stops things from ever occurring.
Great point. Yeah, it's a form of control. Surveillance is a form of control in that way.
Yeah.
So what what FineSend's new cryptocurrency regulation does is it's similar in that if I send you, Joe, or if you send me a big payment of $10,000 in Bitcoin that Coinbase or whatever other cryptocurrency account or exchange that I'm using will flag that and send that information to the government and say, hey, Dayton just got a deposit for $10,000 in Bitcoin. He's usually pretty broke. That you might be interested in this because that might be suspicious. He might be doing something. Well, again, if this was a regular bank with fiat currency, they'd have to go to a judge and get a warrant and say, okay, let's check out what Dayton's been spending his money on.
Yeah, it would be the end of it. If it was with cash, it would be the end of it. They would get the notification, and that would be the limit of the information. But with crypto, it's a little bit deeper, right?
It's much deeper, because as we just explained, they're going to send the government my name and my account key. Once the government has that, I no longer have any financial privacy with my cryptocurrencies. None, because they can use that information, no warrant necessary, no subpoena, and go and look at every transaction on the blockchain that I've made. So privacy gone. So this law, while on the surface is similar to laws that exist to govern fiat currency, when it's applied to the cryptocurrency space, it has a wildly different impact. And it's a complete invasion of privacy, and it violates these federal laws that are in place to protect our financial privacy. So it's really nefarious stuff. And I don't want to comment too much on intent, but we have to believe that the people who are making this law either are completely ignorant of the implications here, or that they're very well aware, and they want to go ahead and ruin our privacy and implement this anyway. Either one of those two options, they're not good. We don't want people who are ignorant, who are making regulations and laws about that govern our lives and that impact our freedom for years to come. And we certainly don't want people who aren't ignorant and simply just want to destroy our privacy and keep tabs on everything we're doing.
So I went ahead and I posted a link to our site, stopfinancialsurveillance.org.
Awesome.
So if people want to, jump in and make a comment to to FinCEN and the Treasury on that, that's a really good tool to do so. One other thing that I want to touch on is that it's not entirely related to what's going on with the Treasury and FinCEN, but there's some other stuff going on internationally. I think in particular in India and Nigeria with a very aggressive cryptocurrency regulation that I was wondering if you might be able to touch on a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there might be folks who are listening to this podcast or, listen to our conversation or reading about this who might say, well, who really cares about this obscure cryptocurrency regulation? I don't have any Bitcoin. How this isn't going to affect me. Who really cares? Or maybe they're going to say, oh, you get your, take off your tinfoil hat. The government's not interested in what you're doing, and they don't really care. And if you're not doing anything wrong, what do you have to worry about anyway, right? You hear that a lot. Mm-hmm. But when we look at other countries, we can see very clearly how regulations almost identical to the one that FinCEN is proposing here, how they're used and how they're abused to hurt people in many different ways. So in India, the Central Bank of India, I think back in 2018, actually tried to ban cryptocurrencies. And everybody was very upset. They filed cases that went all the way up to the Indian Supreme Court, and the Indian Supreme Court said, I believe it's the Indian Supreme Court, but I know the courts in India said that, hey, this ban is illegal. People need to be able to trade cryptocurrencies. You have National Central Bank, you have overstepped your boundaries. So the central bank went back to the drawing board. They released a report saying, oh, cryptocurrency is used to finance terrorism and money laundering and all sorts of bad stuff.
There's really similar arguments coming from the Treasury right now in the US, right?
The exact same justification, And that's all untrue. And I'm happy to talk about that in a minute too. But it's the Indian Central Bank is saying again, hey, money laundering, illicit activity, funding terrorism. And again, there's some of the stuff you heard in Wallstreetbets too, right? Like people engaging, ordinary people who are buying and trading cryptocurrency aren't protected from bad actors, and they could lose money. We need to protect them from potentially making millions in this non-government controlled currency. So they released this paper and they kind of this research saying that, oh, this is really bad. We need to regulate this, and we should probably fine and imprison people who trade cryptocurrency because we need to put a stop to this. Well, just recently, in the past couple weeks, Indian lawmakers announced, what they're going to be working on in the next year. And one of the things that they're going to be working on is a ban for cryptocurrencies. So we don't have any details yet because the legislation is still being developed, but the lawmakers in India have announced their intention to create a ban for cryptocurrencies. And what they're saying is you're not going to be allowed to buy them. You're not going to be allowed to sell them. You're not going to be allowed to trade them. You're not even going to be allowed to hold them. So Joe, if you have bought Bitcoin or Ethereum or Dogecoin, Litecoin or anything else, they're going to force you to sell it. And they're going to verify whether you have sold it or not. And if they can verify and prove that you haven't sold your cryptocurrency, you're still holding on to some, they're going to either throw you in jail or they're going to fine you exorbitant amounts of money until you comply. And do you know how they're able to prove whether or not you are holding cryptocurrency?
Through the public blockchain?
The public blockchain, because they have a very similar law in the books which says that whenever you sign up for these exchanges, whenever you make certain transactions, these exchanges need to collect your personal information. They need to tie it to your cryptocurrency keys, and they're going to provide to the governments. The government has this easy access once they want to ban cryptocurrencies to go and research everybody in India who has ever purchased cryptocurrencies and then say, we see that you bought $1,000 worth of Bitcoin here. We don't say that you've sold it. They can do what they want from that point. They can put you in jail. They can fine you. Your financial privacy is not your own. It's been ruined long ago. So I think that's really scary because it shows what governments can do once they have this information and why we shouldn't allow them to even have that option to make these decisions about our financial freedom. It's also, of course, very interesting that the Indian government doesn't think cryptocurrencies are bad. They just think that decentralized cryptocurrencies are bad. So this ban is taking place, but they're still allowing some blockchain technology to be used because they're implementing their own centralized digital coin. So really it's about, they don't want to have competition. They want to have control over the monetary policy in their country. They want to be able to know what you're doing when you're doing it. Obviously, if the government is controlling a cryptocurrency, then the whole idea of privacy is out the window. They're automatically going to have access to every single transaction that takes place on the blockchain because they're the ones who control the blockchain. And one unnamed Indian official I've read said that they have actually modeled this policy off of the Chinese government's policy on cryptocurrency. I believe technically it's somewhat illegal. Cryptocurrencies haven't been outright banned by the Chinese government, but they've made a lot of heavy-handed regulations that effectively prevent people from buying and selling and trading cryptocurrencies. I think licensed financial institutions don't have the ability to provide customers with this service. So, I think Chinese people have some workarounds, but it's very complicated and it's de facto banned. And the reason they've banned it is because the Chinese government has rolled out their own digital coin. And they also say that, your privacy is protected, of course, but we reserve the right to look up information on every transaction because we might need to stop money laundering, terrorism, and other illicit activity. So once again, they're going to destroy your privacy. They're going to track every transaction you've made online. They're going to do it using, taking this decentralized technology that could democratize finance and give people control over their own finances separate from the government. And they're going to make that illegal. They're going to centralize control over this decentralized technology. They're going to use it in very crazy ways to destroy our privacy and perform surveillance in everything we do. So we see that's what happens in India, which is the world's largest democracy. We see something very similar happening in China. In Nigeria as well. Nigeria is a really wild situation. My understanding of it is that cryptocurrencies, the central bank has actually outlawed cryptocurrencies since like 2017, but it really wasn't enforced. And I've read some other statistics that say over 30% of Nigerians actually use cryptocurrencies on a regular basis. They're one of the highest usage countries in the world. So it's just been, a boon to their economy, and it's been very good for the people who use cryptocurrencies for everyday transactions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the Nigerian people have been having a lot of protests against police brutality and corruption, and it's been sweeping across the nation for months. Sound familiar? And the government wanted to put an end to these protests. So one of the tools at their disposal was to identify who the protesters were and to shut off their access to their bank accounts. Right? The government has, the central power over monetary policy. They have control over these federally backed banks, so they can go to the banks and say, "Hey, these people are, disruptors. Maybe they're committing terrorist acts. They're agitators. So freeze their bank accounts." And they freeze their bank accounts. So now these protesters can't get money to hire lawyers. They can't provide for themselves. It's a big warning to other people not to go out and protest, because we're gonna shut off your access to your money. Well, these protesters said, well, if we can't access our money, what are we going to do? We're going to use decentralized cryptocurrencies. We're going to open up accounts with cryptocurrency exchanges. We're going to trade in Bitcoin. And they're using Bitcoin, mostly Bitcoin, to fund protests, to provide food and water and medical costs to people who have been abused by police brutality in these protests, and for legal costs, for representation for people who are being arrested and harassed for, simply protesting and wanting a better quality of life in their country. So, I mean, if you've been living in America and you've had your eyes open for this year, certainly, but the past 300, 400 years, then you can see just, how often American people have protested against things like police brutality, against segregation, against corruption from our officials. And we want that right to protest. The government, we already know the American government has spied on Black Lives Matter protesters. It's created, the FBI created this label of Black extremism,
Yep.
In order to justify surveillance against Black Lives Matter protesters, saying they might want to commit terrorist acts and secede, while ignoring, white supremacist terrorist groups who actually commit terrorist activities and actively promote secession. So, it's not too hard to see how cryptocurrencies threaten people in power, because they provide us with ways to circumvent all of the authoritarian policies that are often being used against us. That's why it's really, really important that when we see something like the Treasury's, policy regulating cryptocurrency, it should be very alarming to all of us, because we can say, oh, look at how they can use regulations to stop people from protesting police brutality. Yeah. Look at how they can use these regulations to force you to sell your assets, because they don't want you to have control of your financial future. What if the dollar collapses? If all my money is in dollars, I'm screwed. But if the dollar collapses and I have assets, whether it's gold or Bitcoin or, a Roger Maris rookie card, those are things that I have that I can use to protect myself. And so it should be very terrifying for the government to have the ability to track, everything you've purchased, what you've been spending your money on, and have the ability to force you to sell it or give it up, because that's what they want to do.
And that all of this chaos here, to me, exposes a number of serious systemic issues in terms of finance and the way that money works. For example, just first of all, the US dollar is sort of in the grand scheme of things, with stuff like the crypto market and the stock market, and even like you said, your baseball cards, a lot of things are a better store of value than the US dollar. If you're holding US dollars, you're losing 15% a year. You're losing money by having US dollars. It's not crazy for people to want to have these other stores of value like Bitcoin or Ethereum or say Monero, which solves some of these problems, but it also exposes the fact that these centralized state-backed currencies are not just being used as a store of value or a way to exchange value, but they are, as Andreas Antonopoulos has said a bunch of times, they are a system of control. And when they start realizing that there are alternative options like Bitcoin, they immediately realize, oh no, we're losing grip on this very coercive system of control. So that's when we see places like India and Nigeria and the United States start to crack down on this stuff because they don't want to lose grip. But it would be best for everyone if more like freedom, financial freedom, whatever kind of freedom, I think is ideal. I think it's going in the right direction, and the stuff that's going down right now is like very revealing about where control is like centralized.
It is. And, similar to what I touched on earlier when we were talking about, Robinhood and GameStop, personally, I'm pretty sure if the entire financial market collapses, it's going to hurt a lot of people. Every time, and it's happened multiple times in my lifetime, whenever there's been a big financial bubble and the market has collapsed, it's hurt people like me. There's been layoffs. There's been, even for people who have jobs, salaries are depressed. Mm-hmm. People are unemployed for years and years. These things have real world repercussions. So I do understand that there are some real dangers to people like you and I when the market collapses, when the United States loses control of its own, monetary policy. There are real threats and real risks to our well-being presented by these, cool decentralized systems. But also there are very real opportunities for us to, gain financial freedom, to have power over these systems, to have not just power, but independence. To do what we want to do. So there's real promise and opportunity here as well. And we have to take that very, very seriously. I think that, you mentioned earlier the link about terrorism and money laundering. And so Janet Yellen, who is the, Biden just named her the Secretary of the US Treasury. So in her first comments, public comments as Secretary of the Treasury, she said that she wanted to curtail the use of cryptocurrencies. And she said that because she believes they are mainly, that's her word, mainly used for illicit financing, money laundering, terrorism, and other illicit activities. I said earlier that we don't want to be governed by people who are either ignorant or have nefarious intentions. And I think that's the only explanation those are really the only two explanations for her comments. She walked those back a day after just a little bit and said, cryptocurrencies do have the promise to, democratize finance and help people and yada, yada, but they can also be used, for very bad purposes like money laundering and terrorism. And we need to, make sure they're regulated properly, blah, 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 blah. But that's a wildly ignorant thing to say. Yeah. Because there's data again.
Inaccurate.
It's dangerous because it's inaccurate. Like again, information on blockchains is public. We can study how people are using cryptocurrency. So there is some very good research out there that shows that people are not using cryptocurrencies to finance money laundering or terrorist operations. People know that their actions are being recorded in the public blockchain. Yeah. Some people, of course, are using these things to commit crimes. And you can read in headlines how, the feds have tracked, certain criminal activities through the blockchain and made big busts. It happens, but it happens far less frequently than how fiat currency is used for money laundering and financing terrorism and other illicit activities. In fact, the Treasury's own files were leaked last year. The FineSend files. Anybody can Google it. Google the FineSend files. And these detail how Deutsche Bank was helping launder money for Russian mafiosos, and how everybody knew about it. And Deutsche Bank, I think one of the penalties that was leveled against them was $6,000 for moving hundreds of millions of dollars for Russian gangsters. That's wild. Citibank, HSBC, JP Morgan Chase, the list goes on and on. All of these established traditional financial institutions using government-backed fiat currencies are helping launder money for terrorist organizations, for drug cartels, for sanctioned state actors. They're doing all these illegal things at a rate that is far greater than cryptocurrency. And not just the rate too, but think of the scale. Cryptocurrency is such a small part of the global economy compared to like money, real cash money. And so this is happening at a higher rate with real cash money, and real cash money is huge compared to cryptocurrencies. So the real problem, we have evidence what is going on of who's committing these crimes. Janet Yellen isn't using her first statement as Treasury Secretary to go after Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan Chase, HSBC, and all these known bad actors who the Treasury literally is aware of the crimes they've committed and has files on the crimes they've committed. She's not going after them. Joe, she's going after you. She's going after me. She's going after cryptocurrency holders. It's absolutely wild. And it's, similar to what we talked about earlier, it's an emperor has no clothes moment. It's like, why are they doing this? It's clearly to protect, the people who have, control of financial power right now, because those people are, helping the system exist. They're perpetuating this inequality, and the people who are benefiting from it will say, hey, that's all fine and dandy as long as we get our paychecks. But these guys like Joe and Dayton who are trading Bitcoin, well, that's a threat to national security. We've got to make sure we look at everything they're purchasing.
And the super insulting thing about it too is Secretary Yellen didn't get to the position that she is in by being stupid. She's not stupid.
No, she's a very smart woman.
She knows what she's talking about. And when she tells lies like she did, she is just saying that she thinks that we're stupid. There's no other reason that she would say something so verifiably false in the position that she's in. It's crazy. She knows.
I mean, it's I think, and her comments aren't meant for people like you and me. They are meant to build this narrative that gives her and other people in the government the political capital necessary to enact the policies that they want. And I don't doubt that there are people in the government who firmly believe that what they're doing is righteous morally, and that what they're going to do is going to help catch people who are distributing child sexual abuse materials and drugs and funding terrorism and bad state actors. I'm sure there are people who firmly believe that the greater good is going to be served by sacrificing our freedoms. But that's scary. That is scary. If you really believe that your cause is righteous, you can come at us with real stats, with real reasons. We can have adult conversations. If you think that the American public is too dumb to understand what you're really doing, then you should not be in a position of power. It is your job to be able to communicate what you want to do effectively with everybody, and to get people on board. That's that whole democratization that we're talking about. We live in a democracy. We shouldn't have to democratize our democracy, but that's the fact of the matter is that's what we have to do.
Well, thank you for joining me, Dayton. This has been really cool. Is there before we close out, was there anything that you wanted to mention that we haven't got to yet?
No, I think that covers it. I would just suggest that if people are interested in learning more about this, check out Stop Financial Surveillance. Register your comments with the Treasury. When we started this campaign, I think there were something like 250 comments total against this new FineSend regulation, and now it's well over 7,000. I think 3,000 have come through our website directly. I know, Joe, you did an AMA on Reddit, I think with the folks from Monero and some people from some other organizations, just building up opposition to this bad regulation and letting people know what's going on. So read up about it, Google FindSend files, check out Stop Financial Surveillance, and let people know, because the more we know about this, then the more difficult it's going to be for folks to use bogeymen like money laundering and terrorism financing to impose financial control over our lives.
And I posted that link in the chat. That's stopfinancialsurveillance.org for people that might be listening or seeing this video out of context. And yeah, I thank everybody that hopped on and joined us. If you haven't already, make sure to like the video. If you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe. And if you like the content, make sure to share it with your friends. So that's it for this week. We'll be back again, same time, 1 o'clock Eastern on Fridays. And I look forward to seeing you all again. Thanks for joining me, Dayton.
Thanks for listening to me rant.
Anytime.
Take
Bye,
care.
everyone. All right.